I'm very, very glad that we have also with us now Pedro Russo, who accepted our invitation. Pedro is now working at the Leiden Observatory, and he is also the president of the International Astronomical Union Commission on communicating astronomy with public. So, and he prepared for us a presentation about some social aspects of space exploration. So thank you very much, and stage is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. Like what Patrick was saying, I work at Leiden Observatory at the Leiden University. I'm a professor in astronomy and society topics, so really in the interface between astronomy and society. And there's so many interesting things happening in that field that I feel really, in a way, privileged to be able to work on that. I had a short video before my presentation that was about how is life at the Leiden Observatory, and I know that I'm talking to a lot of students or colleagues that are starting their careers, and I wanted to share a bit the perspective of what do we do in Leiden, how is to study in Leiden. For example, if you are looking for a master program in astronomy or a PhD in astronomy, you can always contact me. I'm going to give you the emails. I think we have an interesting working space. I think at the moment, Leiden is the largest astronomical observatory or astronomical institute in Europe. There's almost 300 people working in our institute. And it's also the oldest department of astronomy in the world. The Leiden Observatory, the Astronomy Institute, was established in 1633. So some centuries ago, and we have a rich history, and we are quite happy and proud, but we're always looking into the future. So today is Friday, it's Friday afternoon. I know this is already the second day of your workshop, so I wanted to keep it a bit light and a bit interactive. So I have a very different talk. I hope that's okay, and I hope that you really enjoy it as well. I wanted to do a bit of a role playing. I want you to imagine that you are in a different place today, and where we're going to be discussing some interesting aspects of space exploration. So I think they're very much connected with what we do in astronomy, but they are more connected with what we do with space exploration and the current topics and hot topics that we have in this field. So I want you to imagine that we are in extraordinary assembly of the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. So we're going to be having a meeting. So I want this to be very interactive. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your ideas. And so let's see how it works. It's always difficult to do these things online, but hopefully it's gonna work. And we're gonna have interesting discussions that are gonna be really bring us new perspectives on the space exploration topics. I also hope that my sound and my video is working fine. I think it is. And I cannot see you, I can only see my screen, that's why I'm wondering. But can you just confirm that everything is okay with sound and image?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we're gonna be discussing two main things. One of them is about exploration, almost say exploitation, and the other one is about communication. So these are the 2 points that I'd like to discuss today with you, and I want this to be a discussion and not necessarily a presentation from my side. So let's start with the case number one, or with the request number one. So our colleagues from the Space Agency of the Kingdom of Moldavia have requested authorization to this committee, don't forget that we are in a committee, to initiate the mineral exploration of asteroids in our solar system. So we got this request, and as we know, we have this large, we don't even know how many small bodies in our solar system, and some of them are very small, just a few meters, some of them can be quite big, like Ceres. And what is interesting, of course, is these asteroids are quite rich in several minerals, like gold, silver, aluminium, titanium. So they are very rich in these minerals that we can use for some of the technology and some of the industry needs that we have on Earth. So I think it's also clear that there's an interest from some industries to start mining these asteroids. So we can collect these minerals, bring them to Earth, and really start using them for our own development, technology development, and of course, other aspects of industry. We also know that, let's see if this works, we also know that we now have the technology to actually go to asteroids and even collect samples from asteroids and bring them back to Earth, right? This is just, don't forget that in last October, there was this spacecraft, OSIRIS-REx, that managed to do a quite complicated maneuver that they call touch and go tag, and of sample collection of the asteroids, right? So they just managed to go and collect a sample. So in terms of technology that we have to explore asteroids, I think we're getting very close to actually have the necessary technology to go start mining asteroids and bring these minerals back to Earth. So in terms of technology, the technology is already there. However, we're talking about a specific aspect of an industry that at times, and we know that that happens on Earth, has a massive environmental impact. Impact on mining on Earth includes several issues with the environmental impact, like erosion of the soils, formation of sinkholes, a big impact on biodiversity, contamination of soils that sometimes have a large impact on health of the local population and also the local populations. We know this. This is well known, very well reported. So there's this problem that we see that mining creates problems, right? Of course, it's on Earth, it's a different dimension, but now we have this case that we have a country that wants to start mining on an asteroid, but we need to take into consideration some particular aspects of mining, like this environmental and social impact. So this is our first point of discussion. So I want you to consider that we have the technology to extract minerals from asteroids. There's a need, and I think it's quite clear there's a need for some of the raw materials, some of these minerals on Earth. And however, there's some ethical issues of exploring the soil of another body on the solar system. And also there's some environmental issues associated with mining. So the question that I have for you is that should we authorize these governments to mine asteroids in the solar system? So this is the first point to discuss. So I'd like to have an open discussion with you. So I'd like to hear your thoughts and your opinions about this. So let me now stop sharing my screen so I can see you. Who would like to start with their opinion? Just turn on your microphone. You don't have to turn on your camera, but maybe it would be nice to see you. So who do you think, should we authorize this mining initiative or not? Who'd like to start? There's more than 10 people in this room, so I'm sure there's almost 20 of us. I'm sure that you have some opinions about this. So please go ahead and share your opinions. And don't worry if you are not super comfortable with English. I'm not native speaker. I also do mistakes. So just communicate. Don't worry about your English. I think there was Michaela, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Go ahead.
I can, so that you don't. Yeah, hey.
Hey.
Yeah, I think we could really use more information because you should really make kind of a trade-off, evaluate the risks of all the procedures involved to evaluate the impact on the climate on Earth. I wouldn't really see much of an ethical issues for my side, mining a different body, as long as we know that there is no life, there is no potential whatsoever. But when it comes to all these other risks, as you mentioned, environmental, etc., I think it really needs a bit more detailed trade-off process before we can make a decision and also try to evaluate some numbers. I wouldn't be able to say based on what you just presented.
No, okay, and I understand that. So you are pushing for, we need more information. So we need to maybe do a proper study, looking at different details. And what kind of information do you think that we are missing?
Well, in an airplane, if you want to make some new system or something, you really have to look at how much it costs you, for example, per year that this system gets damaged or something. What the risk is, you have, okay, that's maybe not very ethical, but you also have some cost for human life that you take into account and all the risks involved. I think there's also some way to evaluate the damage to the environment, how you can evaluate it. So at least some figures, not just.
So you like to see numbers, right? It's not only about the concept itself, but you like to see proper numbers saying, yeah, is this really feasible or not? this can be done or not. But don't you think that that's a problem for this particular country to decide, right? I mean, if they think that they can make it profitable, just let them do it, right? I mean, it's the financial problem is with them.
Yeah, well, I think it's not theirs really, so I think it shouldn't be just one country deciding. I think it should be a matter of the UN or somebody who would then make the decision.
Very good. I guess that's an important point, right? Because we are looking at the body outside Earth. So we start entering a domain of who owns the asteroids, who should be deciding this.
There's this international law, space law, entire organization dealing with this. So I think they would be able to give you a.
Yeah, this is this committee. I'm pretending that this is the committee that will decide. So, but let's go ahead with the other opinions. I think I see a couple of them. I don't know. Go ahead. Just.
Well, I don't know if you have already said it, but I agree with Michaela. I think we need to have a proper investigation of the body we are going to mine in, and be sure that it has no scientific information whatsoever to offer in the future. So we must be sure that, okay, that's just a plain rock. We don't care if there's some extraterrestrial life, etc., etc. You might have said it. I don't know.
No, I think that's your point. I think it's the point that we need to see if there's some other value to this particular object that could be relevant for scientific reasons for us to further study it a bit more. So we should not just let them go and explore an asteroid. So they are not asking for a specific asteroid. They are saying we want to start mining asteroids. So they are not saying a specific one, but that could be a particular question to raise. Which ones do you want to explore? Yeah. Which one should you want to explore? Very good. No, I think that's an interesting argument. Let's say, what's the value of this object for our own understanding of the solar system, right? And this is a question, of course, we have for asteroids, but you could have these questions also for mining the moon or mining Mars. What's the value that the soil and property have, and how can we put a number to that? Going back to what Michaela was saying. Good. Okay. I think Martin, you have some points of perspective.
Maybe more practical question. What are you going to do then? How are you going to stop the country if you don't allow that?
That's an important question. I don't know which country you represent, but maybe your country can put a space force in place to make sure that they don't go if they decide to go. But that's an interesting question and connects quite well with what the first point Michaela was saying, that who can actually stop these countries to doing this? And this is an interesting question that you are raising, because we see that happening, that some countries really want to do it. And even if you tell them, no, you cannot do it, what are the structures in place to say, no, you are not doing it at all, you cannot do it? There's actually the laws that we have for space exploration at this level are very weak. They are laws from the 70s, so they are treaties. They are not even laws, so they are treaties from the 70s. There's not really like a proper legal framework to put sanctions on these countries to not do it. So that's an interesting point that you should take into consideration. And that may be a good point to say, no, you cannot do it, but we don't have the ways to tell you to completely make sure that they don't do it. So it's quite difficult. So it's a very good point. Any other points? I'm sure that others will have opinions as well. Go ahead. I see you, Justina. Is that you? Who's raising their hands? Sorry, I'm not. Let me go to the participants. It's loading.
I think that Miroslav wanted to ask something.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Who would like to ask? No.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, in my opinion, we should treat space like international water, and we have already laws in place that regulate mining rights in the middle of the ocean.
So that's a very interesting point. This is called in global affairs is called the global commons, which are, for example, the poles, North and South Pole, and international waters and space. They are part of this idea that they belong to the whole humanity and what kind of rules and regulations we have in place. It's interesting that you mentioned the international waters, like the oceans, or like big part of the oceans, because actually I think Netflix is about to release a show about the lack of law on the international waters. And actually there's a lot of issues with the way that some illegal fishing is happening on our planet. Actually, it's a massive problem. It's a quite big problem. And then the issue is that you have the boats that they are exploring, they follow the law of the boat registration. So of course, if there's a flag from a specific country, then the boat needs to be regulated by the law of that country. And that's happening also in space. The space has the same type of legal framework. If you send a spacecraft to a body, you have a flag registration for the spacecraft. In our case, for example, in Europe, we have the European Space Agency, so it represents all these countries, but the United States, they put their American flag, so the laws that they need to follow are American laws. And this it's okay for now, but as you can imagine, like this specific country is requesting a specific mining of these asteroids, they might come up with their own laws, their own legal frameworks to do things differently. So I think there's a bit of a discussion at the moment, and people feel that the laws that we have for the ocean are also problematic, and we need to look into them to make sure that we have proper laws also for space, and we don't commit the same mistakes. So if you are interested about the way that people are taking advantage of the international laws for oceans, I think this Netflix show is going to be quite interesting. I think they're about to release it in the next weeks. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, let's go back to my presentation. I think I would like to do, oops, no, let me do this differently. I need to share my screen as a whole. So let me just a bit. Okay, I think now it's ready. So let's, I don't know how we're gonna do this. I'm gonna need help from someone to count, but I would like to have now a vote. So the vote that we're gonna do is, should we authorize this government, Moldavia's government, to mine asteroids in the solar system? So I'd like to do this as a vote, and I'd like maybe ask Patrick to help me with the participants. So you can check the participants. I think we have, I don't know how many people, 35 people, I think. So you need to gonna count. So let's, if you are in favor to authorize this government to start mining asteroids in the solar system, please raise your hand. And if you're not, don't raise your hand. So let's say, who authorized this government to mine asteroids in the solar system? Raise your hand, and then I think Patrick can see it, and it will let me know how many people voted yes, if you have a majority or not.
So we can give it 10 more seconds.
Yes, please.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so there are some raised hands.
Can you count them?
11.
11. So I guess it's a no, because I think we have 35, right? Or 34 without.
Yeah, there are 35 participants.
Okay, so I think it's a no. So clearly the arguments, we don't have enough information. Maybe that's the problem. So we need to ask more information, and then they can maybe come back and ask again if they want to mine asteroids in the solar system. So that's interesting. Okay, thank you so much for your vote. So let's go with the second one. It's about the communication, like I said. So this is kind of some breaking news. And don't forget, this is a fictional scenario. But the Institute for Search of Extraterrestrial Life has detected a signal that might have been sent by an extraterrestrial life form from a nearby exoplanet system. So we know that this signal originates from the system of exoplanets, TRAPPIST-1, that have been confirmed a couple of years ago as an exoplanet system. So there's confirmation that these planets exist. And it seems that the signal that we received comes from this exoplanet system. We don't know exactly which of the planets, the exoplanets, but we know that it came from this system. However, we don't have any proof that this message is meant for Earth. We don't know if it's a message for us or if it was just a message that was sent to the outer space. This was the signal detected. After detection of the signals and the data processing, this is the signal that we received. So we don't know what it means. This is the signal. We can discuss that as well. There's now one point, and this will make we need to have this discussion. And in 2017, our dear astrophysicist or cosmologist Stephen Hawking said that meeting an advanced civilization could be like Native Americans encountering Columbus. That didn't turn out so well. So Stephen Hawking, in this particular article that they published on BBC and The Guardian, is really advocating for us to not contact civilizations or not try to establish contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. He's warning us that can be problematic. So this is this discussion point number 2. And I would like you to consider the following points, that we have this confirmation of a signal that comes from a confirmed extrasolar, means exoplanet planetary system. So there's a planetary system that sends a message. The signal seems to be sent by an advanced extraterrestrial civilization. At least they can send signals. So that's might mean that they are coming from an advanced extraterrestrial civilization. However, there's a clear danger that this might be a violent civilization and they might locate us if we reply and they might attack us. I think there's also need to take that into consideration. So it's open for discussion. Should we send a message back to this planetary system? Okay, who would like to start the discussion? Any arguments? Justina.
Hi.
Hi.
Think that we are currently unable to communicate between ourselves, and most of the time the messages we send between ourselves in the languages that we think we understand are often misunderstood. So if we send back a message which we don't really understand the first message they sent to us, then what are we sending is not really known. So I think communicating in such an environment is not the best option.
So you think that at the moment we still didn't figure out how to communicate between ourselves, right, in our planet. So maybe because of that we should be a bit more careful and not to attempt communication with this potential extraterrestrial civilization. That's
so
kind of your...
Try to understand the message, the first message.
Okay, so you are advocating, let's try to figure out what kind of message is this, what do they mean by this, so putting some of the, trying to solve pretty much this message, and then yes, decide to reply or not. But what if we will never know what this message means?
Yes, and that's exactly why we should not hurry too much.
Okay.
To not run to our end.
So not point our antennas to the system, to the TRAPPIST-1, and send a message with it. You are advocating for, let's wait, let's try to figure this out, and then yes, maybe reply afterwards. Okay.
As long as you know where the signal came from, you can reply anytime.
That's true. That's true. Of course, it takes a bit of time. This is a system that is some will it's not so close, but it's also not so far. So we'll take some time for the message to get there. But of course, we can wait and decide that later on. Good. There's another comment from Samuel, I think.
Yeah, I think similarly that we should keep quiet and keep listening and probably gathering more information, because we now have satellites and telescopes, so we can observe this solar system with everything what we have and gathering information and keep quiet.
So you're advocating for let's be quiet, but let's keep looking at them. Let's keep studying this exoplanet system. But let's just be quiet. Let's just observe and wait for anything, and then maybe decide to answer later on. That's what I think what you're advocating for. Okay, definitely an interesting approach. Martin.
Oh, I find it highly improbable that if they were harmful, technologically advanced enough for them to come here, they would know about us already anyway. So I think this is a non-issue, actually.
Okay, so you think that the threat to our existence in terms of being an advanced, dangerous, violent civilization is not really necessarily a problem, because you're saying if you already have the technology to send signals like these, for sure they know about our existence. And so we shouldn't worry too much about that particular problem of them coming and attack us. That's pretty much what you're saying, right?
Not exactly in that order. I mean, if they were technologically advanced enough, they would have known already anyway. And if they are not, well, then it might be interesting to communicate and wait some 40 years, I guess, the reply.
But do you think that they are just sending a message like being kind, and maybe this message just means something like, hey guys, we know that you are there, can we come to visit you? So maybe they're super friendly, right? We don't know what the message means. So should we reply, say, hey, come, let's meet? Or what do you think?
I don't really know.
No? Okay, you don't want to meet them. You're just like, let's be on the, okay.
Well, I wouldn't anyway. It would take like 40 years just for the signal to come back. So
exactly. But you don't know what kind of technologies they have to fly or to be transported in space and time. Who knows? But yes, maybe it takes them, at least for our message to get there, might take some time. Or might they have like a detector nearby? I don't know. But that's something that to take in consideration. Thanks, Thomas.
Hi, thank you for a beautiful topic. I agree to keep totally silent for a couple of years, maybe decades, but I'm afraid there will be some strange billionaire popping up and sending the signal anyway. So it's just the same as we were talking about mining the asteroids, whether some government or some other organization would even bother to ask whether we should or should not do this. I guess there will be someone sending the signal anyway, without asking.
That's an interesting point, Thomas, I think that you're making. So maybe, of course, this is confidential for now. Maybe we should keep it within this committee and not even inform the rest of society. That's also a question. Should we inform society in general? Should we have a press release, press conference announcing the detection of the signal? That's another completely different discussion. Should we inform? Should we tell? What do you think? Should be done, or should we just keep it confidential just between us? I think you're muted. I think you're muted.
Sorry. There is great inspiration for me in pop culture, and mainly in a Contact movie, you probably know. So there is a bunch of other questions like social implications and religion implications and everything connected with not only sending the signal or receiving the signal, but also changes that will definitely cause the signal within the society on Earth. So
tell me, what do you think? Should we keep it secret or not?
We are not very good in keeping secrets, I guess.
No. And you know, I think it's also, I think we're talking with astronomers, and this is an interesting question, right? Because maybe astronomers are going to be the first ones to get the signal, either because we are observing these systems. But what is our role? Is our role to decide these things? Should we communicate? We are very much, I think our community is very, very good at communicating and sharing knowledge with the rest of society. So this is an interesting question that we have. What are the implications of sharing information like this? Because like you're saying, we'll have implications that will be not only in our particular understanding of the universe, but what are the implications for religion, for philosophy, for ethics, for politics? I think they bring a lot of different dimensions that have been discussed for decades now. And what are really the implications? So definitely something that we don't have an answer. What is the right thing to do? I think that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely agree. And maybe the last thing I will say, and I will keep students to discuss, that I really appreciate, for example, NASA and ESA and other organizations, that they are sharing everything and they are risking everything in front of the whole Earth. Yeah. For example, the Perseverance landing, it could go wrong in many, many ways. So it's nice that we can be there and share the joy, but it could be also a catastrophe as well. But it wasn't, lucky enough. So it's also the openness I really appreciate in these times, that we can see online what's happening.
Absolutely, and I think NASA and especially does it extremely well. So I will say even better than our own space agency, because they are not only show everything that's happening, but immediately they put all the data out, all these beautiful images. And the ESA is a bit more protective on that, on terms of sharing that information. But definitely, I think we are in the field, both at the space agency but also in astronomy, that we are very much through open and sharing, which is really nice to see. Daniela, I think you have some comments as well.
Yeah, thank you. I just have an idea for consideration that if they wanted to harm us or attack us, would they alert us about that? Like in our history, we know that in wars, if someone wanted to attack a country, he wouldn't tell before he do it. just about that.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely an interesting point. That's why I mentioned something for the discussion, that we don't know if this message is for us, right? We don't know if that's a message telling us. Maybe it was a message that was sent to the outer space and they are waiting for a reply. And if we reply, then they will know that we are here. That's why I said that maybe we need to consider that they don't know where we are. So, but as soon as we send a message, they will know. That's more the point.
So you think like they lay a bait?
Yeah, exactly. Could be. We don't know. We don't know.
Mm, yes.
But could be. That's why we're saying that if we send a message, we might just tell them where we are, and then they will know, and then we don't know what they want. So it's difficult.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other opinions? Anyone would like to share their views on this? No? Okay, so I guess we go for a vote again. Let me put the slides back. Okay, so that's the question. Should we send a message back to this planetary system, to the system of exoplanets? Yes or no? So let's do the same. If you are yes, raise your hand, and we'll count. If you don't want, just don't raise your hand. So let's give 10 to 15 seconds to do that.
So we can give you 15 seconds.
Okay.
Waiting for the raise hands. Don't hesitate. Then. All right, there are some hands popping up.
It's good. People are still considering. It's a difficult one. I know.
Let's also for 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. The voting is finished, and the result is 5 raised hands.
5 raised hands. That's interesting. Okay. So definitely let's not send a message back to this planetary system. Okay, so this is the vote. definitely not. So I guess we're not going to send a message. Some interesting aspects, and I think we're going to entering here now the reality and moving away a bit from the fiction. Actually, we have been sending messages to the outer space. The first one that at least has record back in the early 70s, there was a plaque that was put on the Pioneer spacecraft that was sent to the Jupiter and Saturn. And this plaque had information about humans, but also information about the Pioneer spacecraft, but also about the location of our solar system, and even you can see there the different planets of our solar system, the different trajectory of the spacecraft, and even the model of the hydrogen model, atom model that was also presented. So there was a lot of information here, and this is something that was sent in the spacecraft. The spacecraft is still flying, as you know, so this information can be found by other civilizations. So it's interesting that we already been doing this for some decades. And also in '74, some years later, there was also a signal that was sent by Arecibo radio telescope. As you know, Arecibo now is just not in operation anymore after the massive disaster. So, but there was in '74, there was a message that included information about the telescope, the radio astronomy, humans, and even some information, basic information about DNA that was sent through the radio telescope. So we have been sending this message. And maybe the most complete one was done in 1977 for the Voyager spacecraft. That was a golden disc that actually, it's like one of the first, like a large scale CD with a lot of information, also in the digital form, also with something printed. So, and also the idea that how you can read this and how you can get information from inside the disk with a lot of digital information. So it's quite interesting that we have this idea to also send messages to the outer space. It's been happening. And like what Thomas was saying, there was also some of these projects like the Allen telescope or other telescopes that have been sending some signals. And there's actually a bit controversy in the community, especially in the radio astronomy community, if we should do it or we should not do it. So actually there's a proper discussion about sending signals to the outer space, if we should or should not do it. It's still an ongoing debate and it's still happening. But that's interesting, and it's a very clear example of something that is happening at the moment. Also, we mentioned there is a body that oversees this type of discussions. It's called the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Our Space. They have their headquarters in Vienna, in Austria, so not so far. And they discuss topics like this. They discuss several topics about the space, but they also the space treaty from the late 70s, early 80s. So there's a lot of ongoing discussion about these topics. But there's also a lot of discussion about the lack of authority of this body to actually oversee the implementation of things like this. So that's definitely something for us to maybe we can keep discussing a bit, but to take that in consideration. As a United Nations body, every single country will have a potential representative in this committee. So any country can have a representative in this committee, and they discuss this. Some organizations like the European Space Agency or even the International Astronomical Union, they also have a seat at this body, so they can also participate in the discussions. The European Southern Observatory as well, for example. So there's some international organizations that they have a seat and they discuss on this particular committee. And I think the name also says a bit like the peaceful uses of our space. So it's always this idea that we need to use space, outer space, for peaceful purposes. More interesting things about this topic. I think you realize that the Kingdom of Moldavia doesn't exist. It does exist in fiction. It's actually the country that builds the rocket that sends Tantan to the moon in this famous book, Destination Moon. Actually, it was the Kingdom of Moldavia that had this space program. So that's why I thought it was interesting to use it. Not only NASA builds spacecrafts that can go to asteroids and get samples of asteroids. As you know, Hayabusa 2 from the Japanese Space Agency also managed to collect a sample from asteroids. So this is also, it's an ongoing technology development, and also in terms of research on sample return from asteroids. It's something very interesting happening in the international space exploration. And a country from the European Union, Luxembourg, actually has a law as for mining asteroids. This happened in 2018. So the law exists and gives companies the ownership from what they extract from the celestial bodies. And they say that it takes advantage of this loophole that of the Outer Space Treaty. So the Luxembourg Parliament passed a law to allow companies based in Luxembourg to extract whatever they want from celestial bodies. And they want to be a big of what they call the Silicon Valley of asteroid mining. They really want to support companies to be based in Luxembourg so they can really explore this mining. So the topics that we discussed here, they feel a bit like more like almost like a game, but indeed this is happening at the highest level. At the government levels, they are discussing this, they are trying to see what should be done, what can be done, but a lot of them is this, it's really interesting to see what's going to be the future of this space exploration and space mining. Another topic, for example, NASA has been discussing a lot this Artemis program, this program from NASA to go back to the moon, and the mining of the moon is a big component of these Artemis plans. So there's a lot of things happening at the moment about the, let's say, extraction of mineral resources from the solar system bodies. So this is a very hot topic at the moment. And of course, this Allen telescope, the one that is listening constantly for signals from outer space, does exist. It's based in California in the US. So it's an array of radio telescopes that is only fully dedicated to listen to messages from the outer space. So there's also something that is real. Astronomers are putting big efforts to trying to detect these extraterrestrial signals. So this is also something very clear. Last one, I'm sure that some of you recognize the message, or at least recognize that I posed. That actually comes from a movie called Arrival, a wonderful science fiction movie from 2016. It's about communication with extraterrestrial lives, with extraterrestrial organisms. It's very interesting. So if you don't have plans for this weekend, then you can watch this movie. If you haven't, you should definitely watch it. It's it's an excellent movie, and it's about this idea of communicating with others, communicating with extraterrestrial lives, which is very interesting. Okay, that's the end of my talk. Here is my email address. You can always find it also if you Google me and Leiden, you'll find my email address. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about astronomy, about Leiden. But of course, now we have a bit of time for further discussing this topic or other questions that you might have. And once again, thank you so much for participating. I think it's always interesting to see the opinion of so many of you. To finish, there's something interesting. This is not the first time that I give a talk like this. I gave this talk in different settings. And you see, for example, that if you give this talk for secondary school students, so around 14 and 15, they are very cautious about mining, but they really want to know what's out there. They are saying, so they will say, well, let's not mine, let's think about it. But about the message, 90% of them, they say, yes, let's send the message back. This is teenagers. If you go to the general public, like grown-ups, 25 plus, we'll have the mining, yes, let's mine, we need resources. And the other one, and for the message, they will say, absolutely not. We don't want any problems. We really want to be super, like, no, let's not send a message. So for astronomers, and this is the first time that I'm giving this to astronomers, it's interesting that both were like, no, let's not do it. So I think there's different ideas, what it means to send messages, to explore in different stages of your life or even your career, which I think for me is very interesting to see these differences. So thank you for that. So let me close my screen and let me know if you have any questions, comments. We have a bit of time, so.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It was, I think, really interesting and perfect interactive. I liked very much the style of the presentation. Personally, I am also leading a small club for young astronomers at the National Museum here in Bratislava. So it can be really nice also to try on them. That's something like this.
Yeah, please. I mean, I would be happy to send you the slides and you just use it or reuse. I think this works also. Of course, the language needs to be different, but even with the younger audiences, this works. And I think for us, this of course it's very role playing. It's a bit of a game, but there's some interesting topics for us as astronomers to consider. What's our role on all this, right? Our understanding of the universe and what we need to keep in mind when we are exploring the universe, and what kind of implications that will have in our society and with our fellow citizens. So I think also help us to think about these topics in a different way.
Perfect. So I'm really glad also if you could share with me the presentation, and
Absolutely.
If there are some, thank you very much. And if there are some other questions, I can see the raised hand.
Yes.
So, sorry, we are two in one room, so we always have to synchronize when one is talking and the other ones should be still for the resonance. I have just one comment for what you said last, that the astronomers or the scientists should think about the impact of their explorations, but in the situation in which we are today, with all the pandemic and such stuff, we see that most of the time, at least in our country, the scientists are not the ones who are making or influencing the decisions. So I think it's very important also to consider what impact the scientific circle has on the governments and on the people who decide on the actual course of action.
I think you're raising an interesting point, and of course, as astronomers, we are limited, well, within our topic, right? I think it's also, but I think you're talking about a broader question about what's the role of science in the public domain, and for example, in this particular pandemic, what should be the role of science in terms of deciding on some measures and plans to tackle the pandemic? Should we listen more to scientists? Should we take in consideration the evidence that we have for certain aspects? And this evidence-based policy making, sorry, it sounds like a lot of words, but it's like this idea that how can we support the decision makers, the politicians sometimes to make decisions? It's a very important topic. And of course, it depends from country to country. It depends also from the type of government you have in place. But I think that science should have a role on the policy-making process. But there's also, I think it's not only up to the politicians to say, come and help us. I think it's also up to the scientists like you, like me, to go out and say, if you need, I'm here to help. I want to participate. I want to be out. So I think we scientists also need to have a bit of responsibility to go out and make ourselves available to participate in these discussions. And I think so it's two ways, because I think sometimes we always blame, oh no, politicians, they don't care about science. They don't care about science. But also we scientists, we like to be behind our laptops looking at the data and not necessarily go and talk with the public, talk with the policymakers. We prefer to be more comfortable in our offices or behind our telescopes. So I think also we have that responsibility. So it goes both ways.
Yes, there has to be someone knocking on the door for the other side to open.
Exactly. Sometimes we don't want to open. If it's a message coming from extraterrestrial lives, maybe it's better not to open the door. But yes, but I think in this particular case, we should go also knock at their doors and open the doors when they knock at our doors.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Maybe I can add something, because yesterday we had also some interesting discussion about colonizing Mars. Also, we discussed some topics about going to Mars to launch for some group of people if they can survive them, and for the condition they will have to undergo there. So we tried to discuss if it's possible and if it's ethically all right to colonize Mars. So maybe it will be also an interesting question to add in this discussion.
There's unlimited questions, right? It's like the colonization of Mars is one of them. Sending weapons to space is another one. So there's a lot of different questions that we could discuss. Even, for example, using nuclear energy for space exploration. As we know, the NASA program, all the rovers on Mars, they have small nuclear reactors. The European Space Agency doesn't do that. What's kind of should we let the Americans do that? I mean, if there's an explosion, what kind of impact that will contaminate the surface? So there's a lot of different issues about the space exploration that I think we should have a bigger role. And Mars colonization is a good example. Moon colonization is another one. And what is interesting that, for example, on Mars colonization, using the word colonization in a specific way, it's interesting because now the discussion is completely driven by millionaires, SpaceX, Bezos, all these companies. And we know that even the idea of planet B, to have Mars as the former colony, so we're going to be climate change, implications for planet B, all these things are quite interesting. Another point that I think it would be worth discussing is, for example, the Starling Initiative, right? All these small microsatellites are going to be flying around the Earth like crazy and might have huge implications for astronomy. This is something really concerning. We might be able to not observe the sky like we wanted as scientists. And what are the implications for that, but also in terms of the access to the night sky? There's so many topics that are becoming really, really relevant. And now I don't want to sound too activist, but I think that, in the 50s, there was a big movement coming from the biologists for environmental issues to be like the ones advocating for, hey, we need to take care of our planet. We cannot just exploit the planet. The environmental movement came a lot from biologists. I almost feel that we astronomers need to be the ones also fighting to protect our night skies and our celestial bodies. So we might need to be the, cosmo activists of the next decades, because if not, it's going to be the exploration free for all, destroy our night skies, and it's going to be fine with radio waves, with satellites, whatever it is. So it's interesting to think about this.
That's interesting. I can add also one more thing, because there's an interesting topic you pinpointed, because we have also a group of astronomers who is working on observation of space debris directly at our observatory. So I don't know if anyone of the group is here, but also
I think there's Dr. Rudolph that would like to say something, maybe.
Yeah, also we can.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention the mega constellation satellites problem.
Exactly.
Yes, of course, topics like ET contact or asteroid mining are very, very interesting, but actual issue for astronomers are these mega constellations. Yeah. And it is very close, and this problem, and there's a lot of opinion on this issue, and just want to mention that International Astronomical Union prepared a conference room paper for next April COPUOS meeting in Vienna. So real steps forward
are happening
somehow. Not completely remove these satellites from the sky, but to prepare some regulations or how to manage this last way how to observe the universe from ground-based observatories. So
yes,
it was only a comment.
That was the point that I was trying to make about Starlink. That is one of these mega constellation initiatives that is out there. And absolutely you're right. The International Astronomical Union released a document about the protection of dark skies, both from light pollution, but also radio pollution, but of course the mega constellations. And I don't think that any of us is against development and sustainable development, but I think it's important for us to be part of these discussions and to really understand what kind of impact that will have in astronomy. and there's a clear risk that we might have a bit of a very negative impact on the observations of the way that we do observations nowadays in astronomy. Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Should we stop here?
So are there some other questions or comments? Don't be shy. 3, 2, 1. All right. So once again, thank you very much. It was really interesting.